Hello, friends. Welcome to a journey beyond the boundaries of our imagination. You may recognize me, Albert Einstein, though I'm sure not in this form. But today, I'm here not to talk about relativity or quantum mechanics. No, today, I want to take you on a journey to another world, one that's closer than we think, Mars. Now, imagine this for a moment. What if we could live on Mars forever? What if instead of just exploring this red planet, we could make it our second home? Why does this matter? Well, as we look to the future of humanity, Mars offers us more than just a challenge. It might be the key to our survival. With Earth facing challenges like overpopulation, climate change, and dwindling resources, the idea of living on Mars is no longer just science fiction. It's becoming a real possibility. So, what would it take for us to build a new home on Mars? How would we survive, thrive, and maybe even call this strange and hostile world our world? Let's find out together. Now, let's take a journey back in time to when humanity first began to think about stepping foot on Mars. This question has likely troubled scientists and dreamers ever since humans first looked up at the stars. But what drove us to this ambition? Why did we believe we could conquer Mars? Before we could live there, we needed to understand how Mars might even be habitable. How could we possibly survive on this harsh, almost lifeless world? We started with research. The first steps in the exploration of Mars came through unmanned missions. In the 1960s, during the height of the space race, Mars became a focal point. Robotic landers and orbiters like Mariner and Viking were sent to Mars to study its surface and atmosphere. These missions helped us understand that the atmosphere on Mars is thin and almost devoid of oxygen, and that temperatures could drop to -125 degrees Celsius. However, despite these extreme conditions, Mars has resources that could potentially support us in the future. In the 21st century, with the advancement of technology, a new era began. An era of private companies not only exploring, but aiming to colonize Mars. SpaceX, with its ambitious goal of sending humans to Mars, took space technology to a whole new level. They are no longer just sending probes. They are building spacecraft capable of transporting people and eventually establishing colonies on Mars. One of the most exciting projects is Starship, a spacecraft designed to carry hundreds of people and supplies meant to create the infrastructure needed for Martian settlements. But it's not just SpaceX working on this. NASA is also actively pursuing Mars exploration with missions like the Perseverance rover. Not only is it searching for signs of past life, but it's also collecting soil samples that could one day be returned to Earth for analysis. These missions will help us better understand how to build sustainable habitats on Mars and how to utilize its resources. Now, imagine that in the future, after decades of effort, Mars becomes a new home for humanity. But what will it look like? What do you think the first settlements on Mars will be like? Will they be huge domes protecting us from radiation and cosmic storms? Or perhaps multi-level cities underground, where life will unfold in the quiet and isolation of the Martian landscape? Or maybe they will be sturdy, autonomous structures, fully independent from Earth. And here's a question for you. How would you design the first settlement on Mars? Did you expect it to look like how you imagine it, or even better? Let's think together about how these scientific advancements could turn these dreams into reality. Now, let's talk about something crucial. What do we need to survive on Mars? Mars is a fascinating planet, but it's far from being a friendly place for humans. The conditions there are harsh, and we'd have to make major adjustments if we were to live there. Let's break it down. First, the atmosphere. Mars has an atmosphere, but it's incredibly thin, about 1% of the thickness of Earth's atmosphere. It's mostly carbon dioxide, with only tiny traces of oxygen. This means that without special equipment, breathing on Mars would be impossible. We'd need to create artificial habitats with controlled atmospheres to provide breathable air, much like we use on spacecraft today. Then, there's the temperature. Mars is cold, very cold. The average temperature hovers around -65 degrees Celsius. At the poles, it can get much colder, dropping to -125 degrees Celsius. For humans to survive, we'd need to build habitats that can maintain warmth and shelter from the freezing temperatures. And then there's radiation. Unlike Earth, Mars doesn't have a magnetic field or a thick atmosphere to protect us from harmful solar radiation and cosmic rays. This makes living on the surface dangerous without protection. We would need to create shielding to protect habitats, and maybe even wear suits that can block radiation when we venture outside. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. Mars does have resources that could help us survive. For example, beneath the Martian surface, scientists believe there are large amounts of water frozen in the form of ice. This could be our source of water for drinking, agriculture, and even producing oxygen. We'd have to dig below the surface to access it, but it's there. Speaking of agriculture, one of the most exciting challenges will be growing food on Mars. Without a natural biosphere, we'll need to create our own. But that doesn't mean we can't grow plants. We'd need to build greenhouses with controlled environments, temperature, humidity, and light, so we can grow crops. Some plants, like potatoes and leafy greens, are already being studied for this purpose. In fact, researchers have successfully grown plants in simulated Martian soil here on Earth. It's one step closer to creating a sustainable food source on the red planet. Now let me ask you, what technologies do you think we would need to survive on Mars? Would you design a new kind of greenhouse or create a different method of providing water? What ideas do you have that could make living on Mars possible? Let's explore these possibilities together. Now that we've talked about surviving on Mars, let's consider what life will be like once we've settled there. What will Martian society look like? First, let's think about how we'll organize ourselves. On Earth, societies are built around complex systems of economy, culture, and politics. How will we create a new society on Mars? The first settlers will need to build a new way of life, one that fits the unique challenges of the Martian environment. The economy will likely be centered around the essentials: food production, energy generation, and infrastructure. As we start with small colonies, the economy might be based on self-sufficiency. People will need to work together to create everything needed for survival: growing food, extracting water, generating energy, and building infrastructure to keep the colony running. Eventually, we might see an exchange of resources between Mars and Earth, perhaps even the development of new industries that are unique to Mars. But what about culture? How will Martian culture develop? It's hard to say, but one thing is certain. It won't be like Earth. The physical isolation, the harsh environment, and the new challenges will shape a very different way of living. People on Mars will likely form close-knit communities, working together in a way we haven't seen on Earth. This could lead to new social norms, new forms of cooperation, and maybe even a new kind of society. On a personal level, life on Mars will change how people think, interact, and even create. Can you imagine what art will be like on Mars? With an entirely new landscape, new materials, and a different sense of space, we might see new forms of artistic expression. What about music? How will the isolation and the harsh conditions affect the kind of music people create? Will it reflect the struggles of life on Mars, or will it be an expression of hope, creativity, and the human spirit? And then there's politics. How will governance work on Mars? Will it be democratic, or will new forms of government emerge to better suit the unique challenges of life on a distant planet? Who gets to make the decisions about how the colony is run? These questions will become increasingly important as more people arrive and the society grows. Perhaps Mars will experiment with new systems of governance that reflect the ideals of cooperation and survival. Now, let me ask you, what do you think Martian culture will be like? How do you imagine the music or the art will change in such a unique environment? What would life on Mars look like from a social and cultural standpoint? Let's dive into these questions and think about how humanity's creativity and adaptability will shape a new world. Now, let's face the reality of colonizing Mars. While the dream of settling on the red planet is exciting, it's not without its challenges. There are significant problems that humanity will need to overcome to truly live there. Let's talk about some of the biggest hurdles we'll face. First, the distance. Mars is millions of kilometers away from Earth, which means that communication with Earth will have a delay. When you send a message to someone on Mars, it could take anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes to get a response, depending on the positions of the planets. That might not sound like a lot, but when you're facing a critical decision, that delay could feel like a lifetime. Losing constant contact with Earth could feel isolating, and there might be times when settlers feel completely cut off. Imagine not being able to call home or reach out for help when you need it the most. Next is loneliness. Living on Mars would be nothing like living on Earth. The settlers would be far from family, friends, and the comforts of home. The psychological toll of being away from loved ones for long periods and the isolation of being in a tiny, self-contained colony could have a significant impact. How would you cope with the mental strain of living so far from everything you've ever known? Then, there's the matter of radiation. Mars has no protective magnetic field, and its atmosphere is too thin to shield us from harmful cosmic rays and solar radiation. Over time, prolonged exposure to this radiation could cause serious health problems, including cancer and damage to internal organs. Living on the surface of Mars would require advanced technology to protect us, such as radiation shields for habitats, or perhaps even for spacesuits when we venture outside. And we can't forget about how our bodies might change over time. Mars has only about 1/3 of Earth's gravity, so our muscles and bones would gradually weaken if we don't exercise constantly. This could lead to a range of health issues, including bone loss and muscle atrophy. Would humans be able to adapt to this new environment? Or would we need to genetically modify ourselves to thrive on Mars? But here's the good news. Science and technology might offer solutions to these challenges. For example, scientists are already researching ways to use Mars's resources to create radiation shields and protective habitats. Advances in artificial intelligence and robotics could help with the emotional and psychological challenges of isolation. In fact, we might even develop medical technologies to counteract the effects of living in low gravity. There's also the possibility of adapting human DNA through gene editing to help us better cope with the conditions on Mars. Now, let me ask you, imagine you are one of the first settlers on Mars. How would you deal with the loneliness and isolation? How would you adjust to the physical challenges like living in low gravity? Would you be ready to face the radiation, the uncertainty, and the constant need for innovation? These are the tough questions that future Martians will have to answer. But it's up to us to make those answers a reality. One of the most exciting aspects of Mars colonization is the vision of large cities, megacities, springing up on the Martian surface. These cities will be self-sustaining, with advanced technology providing everything the residents need: food, energy, clean water, and breathable air. Picture vast domes and towering buildings made from Martian materials, bustling with people from all over the world. It might not be long before we see millions of people living and thriving on Mars. In the not-so-distant future, there could be a mass migration from Earth to Mars. Why? The idea of Mars as a second Earth is becoming increasingly realistic. With Earth's resources being stretched thin, climate change, and the looming threat of natural disasters, humanity's long-term survival may depend on becoming an interplanetary species. Mars could offer us a new home, a place to continue life in case Earth becomes uninhabitable. If we succeed in transforming Mars into a habitable world, the planet could host thriving cities and industries, much like Earth. Humans could live in megacities that stretch across vast plains, all while enjoying the beauty of Mars's unique red landscape. This could be our new golden age of space exploration, where humanity is no longer confined to a single planet, but has spread its wings across the stars. Now, I'd like to ask you, how do you think society would change if humans permanently settled on Mars? How would our culture evolve? How would our relationships with each other and with Earth change over time? If Mars became our new home, how would life be different for our children and grandchildren? These are important questions to consider as we imagine the future of humanity in space. In 2023, NASA's Perseverance rover successfully extracted oxygen from the thin Martian atmosphere using an experimental device called MOXIE. It was the first time humanity created breathable air on another planet. Years earlier, in 2015, a Dutch company called Mars One captured the world's imagination by proposing a one-way mission to Mars. Over 200,000 people applied, willing to leave Earth behind forever. The project collapsed, but the idea remained. Maybe not if, but when. In the early 2020s, SpaceX accelerated the dream. Their Starship prototype, once just a gleaming stainless steel rocket tested in the Texas desert, evolved into a system capable of interplanetary travel. Elon Musk publicly declared his goal: a self-sustaining city on Mars by 2050. Meanwhile, scientists in Antarctica began simulating Martian life at research bases like Concordia Station. Temperatures dropped below -80 degrees Celsius. Sunlight disappeared for months. Teams learned how isolation, confinement, and extreme cold could affect the human body and mind. Lessons critical for future Mars settlers. And deep in the Utah desert, the Mars Society built MDRS, the Mars Desert Research Station. There, volunteers live for weeks as if they were already on Mars. They wear simulated spacesuits, deal with limited water, and conduct mock scientific missions. Every meal is pre-packaged. Every walk outside is a mission. It's not just science fiction, it's rehearsal. Some of the most fascinating insights come from plants. In 2021, researchers successfully grew vegetables in soil that mimics Martian regolith. The crops weren't perfect, but they grew. Potatoes, lettuce, even radishes. A nod to the Martian, but very real. And now, space agencies around the world, from China to the UAE, are racing toward Mars. The goal is no longer just to explore it, but to stay. As we reach the end of today's journey into the future of humanity on Mars, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. We've explored the incredible possibilities of life on Mars, how we might survive, adapt, and even thrive on the red planet. We've seen that while there are many challenges ahead, humanity's ingenuity and determination might just make it possible for us to turn this dream into a reality. But let's not forget, the future starts now. There's so much we can do today to help bring this vision closer. By supporting space exploration, advancing technology, and investing in science, we are laying the foundation for future generations to live on Mars. So the question remains, what can we do right now to make living on Mars a reality? Maybe it's supporting space programs. Maybe it's learning more about space exploration. Or maybe it's imagining what life could be like in this new world. The journey is just beginning. And stay tuned. This topic is far from over. In future episodes, we'll dive deeper into the specific technologies that will help us build cities on Mars, the challenges of terraforming, and what it will take for humanity to truly make a home on the red planet. There's so much more to explore, and I can't wait to continue this adventure with you. Thank you for joining me today on this cosmic journey. Until next time, let's keep dreaming big and looking to the stars.